Poor widow begged for work, rancher growled. Only job here is warming my bed. The sun hung low over the dusty plains, painting the sky in shades of red and orange. A lone figure trudged across the barren land, her worn boots kicking up small clouds of sand with every step. Mara, a widow barely in her 30s, carried a small bundle of belongings and a deep weight in her heart. Her husband had died a year ago, leaving her with nothing but memories and the quiet ache of loss. The world seemed to have turned against her, yet she refused to give up. Somewhere ahead, she hoped, lay a chance to survive, to rebuild a life. As she walked, the wind carried strange scents, the metallic tang of distant machines, and something unfamiliar, almost sweet. Mara's curiosity stirred. It reminded her that this was no ordinary plain. She had heard rumors of a remote ranch on this planet, a place where humans had settled, raising strange livestock and experimenting with new technologies. Work there was scarce, but so were people willing to face the harshness of the frontier. She tightened her grip on her bundle, determined to reach it. Hours passed. The heat of the sun pressed against her back, and her legs ached. Just when fatigue threatened to overwhelm her, she spotted it. A sprawling ranch, surrounded by fences made of metal and wood, glinting under the dying sunlight. Strange structures rose from the ground, small towers, water tanks, and what appeared to be mechanical pens. In the distance, a few humans moved among the livestock, their forms small against the vast horizon. Mara approached cautiously, unsure how she would be received. Frontier ranches were rarely kind to outsiders. She had no papers, no references, no skills beyond hard work and determination. But she had something most others didn't: the refusal to quit, even when the world seemed determined to crush her. "Hello?" she called softly as she stepped into the ranch yard. The figure that emerged from one of the buildings was tall and broad-shouldered, with sun-leathered skin and a weathered face. His eyes were sharp, like a hawk's, and they studied Mara with a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. This was the rancher, known among locals as Garrick Stone, a man as tough as the land he ruled. He had been alone on this ranch for years, managing the livestock and machines with a grim efficiency. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice low and rough. I'm Mara," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I've come looking for work. I can cook, clean, repair things. I'll do anything." Garrick's eyes narrowed. He let out a dry, humorless chuckle. "Work, huh? Around here, the only job is keeping the machines running and the animals fed. You sure you're ready for that?" Mara felt a pang of frustration. She had heard stories of ranchers making cruel jokes to discourage strangers, but she refused to let it shake her. "I am," she said firmly. "I don't mind hard work. I can learn fast." Garrick studied her for a long moment, then grunted. "All right, but don't think this place is easy. It'll chew you up and spit you out if you're not careful. Follow me. I'll show you what needs doing." The ranch was larger than Mara had imagined. There were pens holding strange creatures, some resembling cattle but with armored hides, others with long, flexible necks and glowing eyes. Machines hissed and clanked, moving automatically to feed the animals or water the crops. The entire operation felt alive, as though the ranch itself was a living, breathing entity. Garrick led her to a small building that smelled of oil and metal. Inside were tools, spare parts, and piles of supplies. "First thing," he said, "you help repair the water pump. It's been acting up since yesterday. Then you feed the southern pens. I'll be checking on your work." Mara rolled up her sleeves. She had never seen a machine like this before, but she was no stranger to fixing things. With careful hands and an attentive mind, she began examining the pump. The problem was a loose valve and a worn gear. She replaced the gear using one from the spare pile, tightened the fittings, and tested the flow. Water gushed smoothly into the pipes. Garrick watched silently, arms crossed. When Mara stepped back, wiping sweat from her brow, he nodded. "Not bad. You've got a steady hand. Maybe you'll survive after all." Encouraged, Mara moved on to the southern pens. The creatures inside were skittish, some sniffing the air suspiciously. Mara remembered the stories her husband had told her about human adaptability, how humans could read animals, anticipate their behavior, and use reason and care to gain their trust. She spoke softly to the animals, letting them sense her calm presence. Slowly the creatures settled, allowing her to feed them. One even nudged her hand gently, as if to say thank you. By the time she finished, the sun had dipped below the horizon, leaving the ranch bathed in twilight. Garrick approached, his expression unreadable. "You did all right today. Most people quit after the first few hours. You, didn't." Mara smiled, tired but proud. "I need this work," she said simply. "I'll do whatever it takes to survive." Garrick nodded, as though approving her honesty. "All right, then. You can stay the night in the guest room. Tomorrow we start early. Don't be late. The ranch doesn't wait for anyone." The guest room was small but clean, with a narrow bed and a window overlooking the plains. Mara lay down, exhausted, yet her mind was alive with possibilities. She had arrived at the ranch, and though the road ahead would be difficult, she felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps here, among these machines and strange creatures, she could find a new life. Perhaps here she could prove herself not just to Garrick, but to herself. Outside, Garrick stood by the edge of the ranch, looking at the darkening horizon. He had lived alone for years, guarding his land and his secrets. Few outsiders survived more than a week on this harsh frontier. But Mara, there was something different about her. She had grit, intelligence, and courage, traits that were rare, valuable, and dangerous, depending on how they were used. The night air grew colder, and the sounds of the ranch faded into the distance. Mara slept lightly, dreaming of machines that hummed like living creatures, of strange animals that seemed to understand her, and of a life that, though hard, might finally belong to her again. Tomorrow would be another day of hard work, tests, and challenges. But for the first time in a long while, Mara felt she had a chance, not just to survive, but to thrive. And Garrick would soon see that this widow was more than she appeared. She was human, and humans had a way of surprising even the toughest men on the frontier. The first rays of sunlight pierced the horizon, casting the ranch in a soft golden glow. Mara woke early, stretching stiff muscles from the day's labor. She dressed quickly, eager to face the next challenge. She could hear the faint hum of the ranch machines starting up, the rhythmic clanging of metal, and the low murmur of creatures in their pens. Life at the ranch never stopped, and Mara knew she had to keep pace if she wanted to survive here. She stepped outside, carrying a bucket of water and a small toolkit. Garrick was already moving among the pens, his sharp eyes scanning every corner. When he saw her, he gave a curt nod. "First task," he said, pointing to a long row of pens in the eastern section of the ranch. "The neon antelopes got restless last night. Some of the fences are damaged. Fix them and make sure none escape. Then feed the herd." Mara hurried over, inspecting the fences. The neon antelopes were creatures she had never seen before, tall, lithe, with translucent fur that glowed faintly in the morning light. Their long legs and quick movements made them unpredictable, and their curious eyes followed Mara's every move. She began repairing the fences, using metal rods and spare wires from Garrick's tool shed. It was painstaking work, but she focused, knowing that even a small mistake could lead to chaos. One antelope nudged a loose panel, causing it to wobble dangerously. Mara grabbed it just in time, steadying it with firm hands. She muttered under her breath, "Not today, little one. You're staying inside." Hours passed as she worked tirelessly, sweat running down her face. When the last fence was secure, she began feeding the neon antelopes, scattering nutrient pellets and ensuring fresh water was available. The creatures approached her cautiously, sniffing her hands, then eating calmly. Mara felt a small smile form. She had earned their trust, even if only for a short while. Garrick watched silently from the shadows, arms crossed. "Not bad," he muttered. "You move slow but steady. Animals respond better to steady hands than fast ones." Mara nodded, grateful for the faint praise. She had learned something important. Even on a harsh frontier, patience and care could be more valuable than strength alone. By midday, the sun beat down fiercely. Mara moved on to the mechanical section of the ranch, where machines pumped water, dispensed food, and monitored the animals' health. Garrick had insisted she learn how to operate them. She studied the panels, buttons, and levers carefully. At first, it seemed confusing. Lights blinked, pipes hissed, and the machines made strange, high-pitched noises. But Mara remembered her husband's words about problem-solving. Observe, think, act. She adjusted a valve here, tightened a screw there, and gradually the machines hummed smoothly. A conveyor belt carried feed to the pens without spilling. A water pump started pumping at the correct speed. Mara felt a surge of pride. She had never operated such technology before, yet she adapted quickly. "Looks like you're getting the hang of it," Garrick said, approaching. "Most people give up before they even understand half the system." Mara wiped her brow. "I don't give up easily. I need this work." Garrick studied her, his face softening slightly. There was something unusual about her determination. Many people had come here seeking work or a place to hide from life, and most lasted a few days. Mara had been at the ranch less than 24 hours, yet she had already shown skill, courage, and intelligence. Their work continued through the afternoon. Mara cleaned pens, repaired broken equipment, and even helped nurse a sick neon antelope back to health. The creature, weak and trembling, seemed to sense her kindness. Mara whispered soothing words and adjusted its feeding tube carefully. By evening, it stood on wobbly legs, gazing at her with what she imagined was gratitude. Garrick observed quietly from a distance, noting every move. He had been a loner for years, relying only on himself, and yet he could not ignore her skill. He realized that Mara might not just survive on the ranch, she could improve it. But trusting someone was harder than training them, and Garrick had always been cautious. As night fell, a strange sound echoed across the ranch, a deep rumble, like distant thunder, though the sky was clear. Mara froze, listening. The neon antelopes perked up, ears twitching, eyes glowing brighter. Garrick's eyes narrowed. "Storm," he said. "No, not a storm. Something else. Something moving in the plains." Mara's heart quickened. She had already faced danger today, but this was different. Garrick grabbed a lantern and motioned for her to follow. They moved toward the edge of the ranch, where the land sloped downward into a shallow valley. From there they could see it. A group of strange, large creatures moving quickly toward the ranch. Mara had never seen animals like these. Hulking quadrupeds with armored hides and glowing red eyes. They weren't wild neon antelopes. These were predators, possibly alien scavengers. "Stay behind me," Garrick instructed, drawing a long, reinforced staff from his belt. Mara nodded, her mind racing. She had never fought before, but she could help. She grabbed a small toolkit and made her way closer, observing the predator's behavior. The creatures circled the perimeter, sniffing the air and testing the fences. Mara noticed that one of the weaker fence panels was under strain. Quickly, she tightened the wires and reinforced the post with spare metal rods. Garrick shot her a look of approval. "Smart," he said. "You think fast under pressure." The creatures hesitated, their glowing eyes scanning the reinforced fence. Then, with a low growl, they turned and moved away, vanishing into the darkness. Mara let out a long breath, shaking with adrenaline. Garrick clapped a hand on her shoulder. "You've got guts. I'll give you that." Not many people would risk themselves for a fence. Most would run. Mara smiled faintly, her energy spent but her spirit strong. "I don't want to run," she said. "I want to survive, and I want to help." That night, as they sat by the small fire outside the main building, Garrick shared stories of the ranch. He spoke of other settlers, past threats, and the challenges of maintaining life on a distant frontier planet. Mara listened closely, learning not just about the ranch, but about resilience, patience, and the importance of observation. "I've been alone here for years," Garrick admitted. "Most people don't last." You might, but it's not just about work. It's about thinking ahead, noticing details, and trusting yourself. Mara nodded. "I've had to trust myself my whole life. Losing my husband taught me that. You either adapt or you don't." Garrick grunted. "Smart woman. Just don't let that cleverness get you killed." The night passed with quiet conversation and the distant hum of machines. Mara felt a sense of belonging she hadn't felt in a long time. She was learning, growing, and surviving. More importantly, she was beginning to earn the respect of someone as hard and cautious as Garrick. When dawn came again, Mara was ready. The previous day had tested her, but she had passed. She knew the frontier would not be easy, and challenges would come. Storms, creatures, and perhaps even people with ill intent. But she also knew something powerful. Humans could adapt, endure, and overcome. She had already proved it once, and she would prove it again. As she stepped out to face the new day, Garrick called after her. "You're learning faster than I expected. Keep that up, and this ranch might just survive longer than I thought." Mara smiled to herself. Respect, she realized, was earned through action, courage, and intelligence, not words, and she had plenty of all three. The ranch, harsh and lonely as it was beginning to feel like a place where she could belong. And Mara, once desperate and alone, was beginning to feel hope again. The morning sun rose slowly, casting long shadows across the rugged landscape of the ranch. Mara woke to the faint hum of the machines and the soft rustle of the neon antelopes in their pens. She stretched, her muscles still sore from the previous day's work, but her mind was alert. Garrick had warned her that the frontier was never forgiving, and Mara had learned the hard way that even small mistakes could have serious consequences. As she stepped outside, she noticed something unusual. Tracks, wide, heavy, and deep, led from the distant hills toward the ranch. Mara knelt, examining them closely. These were not the marks of ordinary animals. The footprints were too large, too deliberate. Something, or someone, was coming. She hurried to the main building, where Garrick was already inspecting the perimeter. "Tracks," she said, pointing toward the horizon. "Something's coming this way. They're big, heavy, not normal animals." Garrick's eyes narrowed. "I was afraid of this," he muttered. Raiders. Mara's stomach tightened. She had heard stories of raiders on the frontier, groups of desperate or cruel people who attacked isolated settlements for food, supplies, or technology. She had never faced humans like that before, only harsh environments and wild creatures. But this was different. Raiders? She asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Yes, Garrick said, his tone grim. They've been moving through the plains for weeks, picking off small settlements. If they get to this ranch, we'll lose everything. Mara's heart pounded, but her resolve did not waver. What can we do? Garrick studied her for a long moment. We prepare, we reinforce the fences, hide the most valuable livestock, and make sure the machines are running perfectly. And we need to plan traps. You're good at thinking on your feet, Mara. I'll need your help. Mara nodded. She had survived the frontier by adapting, and this was just another challenge. Together they began their work. The morning passed in a blur of labor. Mara and Garrick reinforced the fences with extra metal rods and wire, secured the gates, and tested every automatic system. She checked water pumps, feed dispensers, and even the lighting in the pens, ensuring that nothing could be used against them. Mara's hands were blistered, her clothes streaked with dirt, but she worked tirelessly, fueled by determination. By afternoon, Garrick led her to the hillside overlooking the ranch. From here, we can see them coming, he explained. We can't stop them with brute force alone, but we can outsmart them. Watch their approach and note their patterns. I want to set traps where they least expect it. Mara scanned the distant plains and soon spotted movement. A group of raiders on strange, mechanical beasts riding swiftly across the terrain. They carried long weapons and seemed well coordinated. Mara's mind raced. If the raiders reached the ranch, the creatures inside could panic, the machines could be damaged, and they would be overwhelmed. But she refused to panic. We can slow them down, she said. We can use the terrain to our advantage, and we can set traps to injure their machines before they even reach the pens. But Garrick's eyes gleamed with approval. Good, let's do it. They spent the next few hours preparing. Mara helped rig the fences with hidden snares and mechanical triggers. They buried pits covered with weak-looking earth, ready to trap the raiders' mechanical mounts. She reinforced weak gates and prepared water lines that could be turned into barriers. Her mind was a whirlwind of calculations, predictions, and strategies. Each decision could make the difference between survival and disaster. As the sun dipped low, Mara and Garrick took their positions. The ranch was quiet, almost eerily so, except for the faint hum of machines and the low breathing of the livestock. Mara crouched behind a ridge, peering at the approaching raiders. Their silhouettes grew larger with each passing minute, and she counted at least a dozen, all armed and riding mechanical beasts. Garrick tapped her shoulder. Stay calm. Follow the plan. When I give the signal, activate the traps. Mara nodded, hands steady, despite her racing heart. She had never been in a fight like this before, but she trusted her mind, her instincts, and her human ingenuity. The raiders drew closer, shouting commands to each other. Oh! One of their mechanical beasts stumbled into the first hidden pit Mara had prepared. A shout went up, and the group hesitated. Now, Mara triggered a second trap, sending a net over two more of the mechanical mounts. Chaos began to spread among the raiders. Garrick moved silently, striking from behind, disabling weapons and forcing raiders to retreat. Mara continued activating the traps she had set, her mind calculating angles, weights, and distances. The raiders had technology, speed, and numbers, but Mara and Garrick had preparation, intelligence, and determination. Slowly, the tide turned. One by one, the raiders' machines were trapped, their weapons rendered useless, and their morale shattered. Mara could see fear in their eyes, just as Garrick had warned. The humans on the frontier were clever, but Mara's ingenuity was faster, sharper, and more adaptable than brute force. By the time the last raider tried to break through the main gate, Garrick and Mara were ready. The gate slammed shut, reinforced and strong. The raider's mechanical mount skidded, lost balance, and tumbled. Mara didn't celebrate. There was still work to be done. When the dust settled, the raiders had retreated into the night, leaving the ranch untouched. Mara and Garrick surveyed the aftermath. A few damaged fences, minor scratches on machinery, but nothing that couldn't be repaired. More importantly, the ranch and its creatures were safe. Garrick turned to Mara, his eyes filled with a mix of pride and disbelief. "I've survived many attacks in my time, Mara, but I've never seen anyone handle it like you. You thought faster than most, planned better than some of my old partners. You saved this ranch." Mara shook her head, exhausted but satisfied. "We saved it. Together. I couldn't have done it alone." For the first time, Garrick smiled, a rare, genuine expression that softened his usually stern face. "You're learning fast. Faster than I expected. Maybe, just maybe, this ranch has a future after all." That night, Mara sat by the fire, the adrenaline finally fading. She looked at the stars above the plains, blinking against the dark sky. She had faced danger, tested her courage, and proven her worth, not just to Garrick, but to herself. But she had survived the hidden threat and adapted under pressure, and she knew that this was only the beginning. The frontier was full of challenges, wild creatures, harsh weather, and human threats, but Mara had discovered something more powerful than any machine or weapon: the human mind, capable of thinking, planning, and overcoming even the most desperate odds. Garrick joined her silently, offering her a cup of water. "You did well today," he said quietly. "Better than I could have imagined." Mara accepted the cup, her hands still trembling slightly. "We did well," she corrected. "Together." He nodded, a hint of respect in his gaze. For the first time, Mara felt truly like she belonged. Not as a worker, not as a helper, but as an equal, someone whose skills and intelligence mattered. The ranch was more than a place to survive. It was a place to prove herself, to grow, and to build a life from the dust and metal of the frontier. And Mara knew that no matter what threats lay ahead, she would face them head-on. With her mind sharp, her courage steady, and the lessons of survival guiding her, she could overcome anything. Humans were not weak. Humans adapted. Humans endured. And Mara, once a widow with nothing, was becoming a force to be reckoned with. The fire crackled, casting long shadows on the ground. Mara sat quietly, listening to the hum of the ranch, the soft breathing of the livestock, and the distant calls of nocturnal creatures. She had survived the hidden threat, earned the rancher's respect, and proven her ingenuity. Tomorrow would bring more work, more challenges, and perhaps new dangers. But Mara welcomed them. She had discovered her strength, her resilience, and the power of human ingenuity. And nothing in the frontier, no predator, no raider, no storm would ever take that from her. The morning was tense. Mara woke before the sun, sensing the quiet unease that often precedes danger on the frontier. Garrick had not spoken much during the night, his brows furrowed as he monitored the perimeter. The air smelled metallic, a faint hint of rain mixed with dust, though the sky above was clear. Mara had learned to trust her instincts, and today they told her something was coming, something more serious than yesterday's raiders. She dressed quickly, securing her tool belt and carrying a small bag of supplies. Garrick met her outside, scanning the horizon. Storm, he muttered, his voice low and tense. Or worse, they might come back. And this time, with more numbers. Mara's stomach tightened, but she refused to show fear. She had faced predators, machines, and raiders before. She had survived. She could face this too. Whatever it is, we can handle it, she said. Her voice was steady. Garrick's eyes flicked toward her, and for the first time she saw something other than caution in his gaze. Respect, and perhaps even trust. They moved quickly, inspecting the ranch. Mara checked the mechanical systems while Garrick reinforced fences and gates. They worked silently, each aware that the next hours could determine the survival of the ranch. The neon antelopes and other creatures seemed tense, their glowing eyes reflecting the rising sun. Mara approached them calmly, speaking softly, allowing them to sense her confidence. Slowly, the animals settled, ready for what was coming. By midday, the distant rumble began, a low, vibrating sound that grew steadily. Mara climbed a small ridge with Garrick, using the vantage point to observe the horizon. Clouds had gathered rapidly, dark and swirling unnaturally, and behind them came shapes moving swiftly across the plains. Not just raiders this time, Mara realized, but a combined threat: humans and rogue machines. They were better armed, faster, and more organized than before. Garrick's jaw tightened. "This is it," he said. "We fight smart, not just hard." Mara nodded, her mind racing. They couldn't face this force directly. They had to outthink it. She quickly coordinated with Garrick, dividing the ranch into defensive zones. She would manage traps, machines, and the movement of animals, while Garrick focused on direct engagement, disabling weapons, and protecting the perimeter. The first wave reached the outer fences. Mara triggered the snares and pits she had prepared, sending rogue mechanical mounts tumbling into concealed traps. The raiders cursed and shouted, trying to regain control, but the ranch was ready. Water lines she had adjusted earlier sprayed high-pressure streams at the attackers, slowing their advance. The machines, set on automated defense protocols, whirred and clicked, blocking paths and guarding the livestock. Mara moved swiftly between control panels, her hands deftly flipping switches and adjusting valves. Each action counted. One wrong move could endanger the ranch and everyone inside. She adjusted lights to blind the raiders' sensors and activated noise generators to confuse their mechanical mounts. Humans and machines alike hesitated, disoriented by the unexpected defenses. Garrick moved among the attackers like a shadow, striking with precision. Mara's traps forced the raiders into predictable paths, allowing Garrick to intercept them. He worked silently, efficiently, his years of experience clear in every move. Mara watched, impressed, and knew that she could contribute just as effectively with her mind and planning. Hours passed in a blur of motion, noise, and tension. The attackers were relentless, but Mara and Garrick's preparation and strategy allowed them to control the battlefield. Mara realized that their advantage was not strength, but intelligence, the ability to adapt faster than the enemy. She rerouted water lines, opened gates to funnel attackers into trap zones, and used the ranch's terrain to their advantage. Every decision was critical, and every calculation mattered. At one point, a group of raiders breached the secondary fence, heading straight for the neon antelopes. Mara reacted instantly, activating the emergency penlocks and redirecting a water jet to block their path. The antelopes, now safely contained, watched her with wide eyes. Mara smiled briefly, knowing that the creatures trusted her guidance as much as Garrick trusted her judgment. The storm overhead intensified, wind whipping dust and debris across the ranch. Visibility dropped, but Mara remained focused, relying on sound, instincts, and knowledge of the terrain. She coordinated with Garrick using hand signals, guiding him toward groups of attackers while she managed traps and machines. By late afternoon, the tide was turning. The attackers were exhausted, frustrated, and suffering losses. Mara had used every tool, every trap, and every advantage the ranch offered. Garrick's interventions had kept the most dangerous raiders at bay. Slowly, the remaining threat began to retreat, fleeing back into the plains. When the dust settled, the ranch lay battered but intact. Mara checked the animals, the machines, and the fences. Minor repairs were needed, but nothing was irreparable. She felt a deep sense of satisfaction, not just from surviving, but from proving that humans could overcome even overwhelming odds with intelligence, courage, and cooperation. Garrick approached her, his face tired but proud. "You did it," he said simply. "I've faced countless threats, Mara, but I've never seen anyone plan, adapt, and fight like you. You saved this ranch?" Mara shook her head. "We saved it. Together. I couldn't have done it alone." Garrick smiled faintly, a rare warmth breaking through his usual stoicism. "You're learning faster than I expected. Maybe this ranch has a future after all." Exhausted, Mara finally allowed herself a moment to rest. She looked over the ranch, the machines whirring back to life, the neon antelopes grazing calmly, and felt a sense of belonging she had not known for years. She was not just surviving, she was thriving. She had faced danger, solved problems, and earned respect, not through words, but through action. That night, the storm passed, leaving a calm, clear sky filled with stars. Mara sat by the fire, reflecting on the day's events. She thought of the raiders, the machines, and the unpredictable creatures she had guided. She realized that human ingenuity, courage, and determination were more powerful than any weapon or storm. Garrick joined her, handing her a small cup of water. "You've grown stronger in these few days than most people do in months," he said quietly. "The frontier, it tests everyone."
"You've passed." Mara took a sip, her hands still shaking from exhaustion.
"I've had to learn fast," she said. "I had no choice. But I've learned that humans can survive anything if they think, adapt, and work together." Garrick nodded. "Yes, that's what makes humans human." For the first time, Mara felt completely at home. She had arrived at the ranch as a desperate widow, uncertain and alone. Now she was a trusted partner, a problem solver, and a survivor. The ranch was not just a place to work, it was a place to belong. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, perhaps new threats. But Mara knew she was ready. She had tested herself under fire, solved impossible problems, and proven that human courage and intelligence could overcome even the most overwhelming odds. As she lay down to sleep, the ranch quiet and peaceful around her, Mara thought of the future. She would continue learning, growing, and protecting the place that had given her a second chance. She had survived storms, predators, and raiders. She had adapted, endured, and triumphed. And she knew that whatever came next, she would face it head-on, with courage, intelligence, and the unbreakable spirit that made her human. The frontier was harsh, unforgiving, and unpredictable. But Mara was no longer afraid. She was ready.